What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro. And if you are familiar with my channel, you know who this guy is. This is my homie, Rylend Grant. Welcome back to the show.
Howdy, howdy. What does this say? Is this fourth appearance? Is this third appearance?
This is your fourth appearance, because I think you came on for the Jump one, issue one. I think you were on for Peacekeepers, and then Jump 2.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So I mean that's been in that's all been in basically a year, right? Because Jump 1 was June of last year. And now finally back in comic shops. It's like
Right?
yeah, you have been in touch with the Rylend Grant story these last couple of years. Yeah. So I mean that ends up being like an interesting arc, because it was like so we're here to talk about Suicide Jockeys, which
Right.
we should talk about. That's hitting comic shops in August, right? My kind of bonkers tokusatsu action joint. We'll talk about it. But Suicide Jockeys was with a big publisher. It was set to be announced around this time last year, June of last year, basically.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. It was pencils down. Well, I guess all of that happened earlier. It happened in like February of the year. So, but it was going to come out around June.
Right.
Then it was pencils down everywhere, and then everyone started getting fired at these publishers. And so what happened is I had a Go comic at a big publisher, and then like they cleaned house. And so I was one day I was communicating every day with like 3 people inside the company. And literally overnight, I did not have a working email address at the company. And then the whole book was was in question. And then there was like nowhere to take a book for a long time in terms of like traditional publishing, in terms of getting it into a comic shop. And so that was why I made the Kickstarter jump. There were there were creators like Charlie Stickney, who does White Ash, as the co-publisher at Scout Comics. He had been on me for about 2 years to try Kickstarter, give Kickstarter a try. There's a huge opportunity there. And I had been putting it off mostly because I didn't want to do fulfillment. And so finally COVID hits. I have like 4 titles in the pipe, nowhere to take them, literally. And so I'm like, okay, well, there's an opportunity on Kickstarter now. Why don't I try this? And then a year later, 2 Kickstarter books, 3 pretty successful Kickstarters, and now Suicide Jockeys is finally back on track, and with Source Point Press, and gonna hit comic shops in August. So
that's what's so interesting about, because I remember from our first interview, like you said, about a year ago, and I asked the question, why Kickstarter? And you talked about how COVID hit, pencils down, and you had some stuff in projects. And so now it is like we are full circle. So
yeah,
you guys, just if you haven't watched the past interviews, at least watch the first one. It's my first interview ever on this channel,
nice.
And B, it will give you the full complete story. And I feel like Charlie works for Kickstarter, because literally I just had Clay Adams on my show, who was like, Charlie Stickney was like, or maybe it was I had someone else was on my show and was like, yeah, Charlie's like, go make a book for Kickstarter. I was like, man, he's telling everyone.
He is definitely Kickstarter's biggest advocate, but he's one of the biggest advocates of just creators in general. And
he really is.
He wants to see everyone succeed, and it's a big reason why Charlie succeeds, is because he lifts everyone up around him, and everybody wants to see him succeed too. And he's a good model, I mean, it's comics. I've talked about this before. Comics is an ecosystem. If you want to succeed, it's not about what comics can do for you. It's about what you can do for comics. And when people see you contributing and lifting everyone up around you, then they're going to come and help you. And so Charlie is the most shining example of that, probably. I mean, it's how he got hired at Scout Comics. Comics is like, wow, look at what this guy's doing. Look at look at how he sort of is a leader in this community. Look at how he sort of sees the future in terms of publishing. He sees opportunity. Obviously, like, the comic shop game is changing. Traditional publishing is changing radically, and guys like Charlie are on the are on the sort of the front lines of it. And the other people that run Scout Comics are very intelligent also. They're smart enough to see this, and so they're like, well, we need this guy in here as our field general, and they're doing really well because of it.
Well,
congrats to them and congrats to Charlie. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, you are like, I mean, you've been on the show 4 times, and the biggest joke now on the show is that anytime a creator comes on multiple times, that you are going to launch a new Kickstarter, so that you can always. And we made that joke because I had one of your friends, Carl, on my show the other day,
Yeah.
and we made that joke, and literally the next day, I got a message from you. I was like, "Hey, I got a book."
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely. I want to maintain the record for most appearances. I
Right.
don't like being shown up by anybody. So yeah, as soon as if too many of my friends get on, then yeah, I need to come on and sort of replant my flag in this moon here.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's talk then about your new adventure back into comic stores with
yeah,
Suicide Jockeys. What is
yeah.
it about?
Well, it is. So it's a tokusatsu joint, as I said, and for the a lot of people will know what that is. A certain brand of nerds, some won't. When I explain it, so tokusatsu is the Japanese sci-fi genre that includes like Power Rangers, Ultraman, kaiju films like Godzilla. And so Suicide Jockeys is tokusatsu for the contemporary American action movie fan. It's essentially Voltron meets Fast and the Furious with like an extra dollop of heart and soul. And so yeah, the Suicide Jockeys, it is a crew. It's like a scrappy, dirty dozen like crew of tank and aircraft pilots that are led by this father figure, Denver Wallace, who's kind of a like a kind of a latter day Bruce Willis type. And so for years, they kind of gleefully stood between the earth and anyone or anything that meant them harm until, years ago, there's this mission that goes terribly wrong. They're chasing this kind of robot wielding whack job billionaire criminal. Billionaire goes back in time. The crew chases her. They cause this massive tear in space time, threatens to swallow up all of existence. The team's mother figure, Denver's love interest, Naomi, sort of heroically sacrifices herself to save the team, to save the family, to save the world. And so that's the past. Issue 1 kicks off 10 years later. Everybody's kind of still reeling. And this scientist kind of shows up with evidence that Naomi might still be out there somewhere, kind of lost in the vast ocean of space and time. And so Denver has to kind of pick himself up off the proverbial and literal floors, sort of slap the team back together. And, they need to go out and bring Naomi back home. So, yeah, kind of a cool, badass ride. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like big poppy swaggery action, again with the heart
Yeah.
and soul. Kind of, I don't know, Favreau's Iron Man meets the Expendables, but with like kaiju and giant robots. And yeah, it's fun, it's bonkers, it's crazy, I love it. Go ahead.
Your pitches are always the best because I'm like, you take two properties like that, like I'm like, huh, I never would have thought to put those together, and you're like, bam, and I'm like, I'm in. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm I am such a I mean, I have this like snooty side of me, I mean, I came up during the Sundance movement. I mean, I saw Pulp Fiction and that and decided, hey, I want to do that. I want to make movies. And I came out here and I went to the American Film Institute Conservatory where, fucking David Lynch went and Aronofsky went, and I got my snooty, auteur filmmaker education. And the twist, for better or for worse, was that by the time I got spit out into the world of making movies, like they kind of stopped. The Sundance movement was gone. They kind of stopped making those movies, and so for better or for worse, I ended up with this career writing big poppy action movies in Hollywood, and it's been good. I mean, I've written for Ridley Scott and J.J. Abrams and John Woo and Justin Lin and F. Gary Gray and so on and so on, and that's been awesome. I have this other side of me. My if you ask me what my favorite films are, I'm gonna come out with fucking Top Gun and Die Hard and Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours, and that's really where my passion is. And it's like those movies had so much, but where I'm going with this is like this subgenre that I love more than anything. I mean, if we're in my office now, and you can kind of see my craziness, but I have my VHS player,
so
and
good.
and a in an old CRT TV, and then if you look there, it's just towers of VHS tapes that I have yet to kind of organize yet. But I put stuff in the VHS player while I'm writing, while I'm working, and particularly lately, but I think, you know, any day of the week, if I can put in any movie, right? And what I'm going to put in usually is it's going to be like Armageddon, or it's going to be The Rock, or it's going to be Face Off. You know, it's going to be a movie like that. It's going to be this you know, this 90s balls to the wall kick-ass action movie. You know, Crimson Tide is another one that's kind of like in that vein, but that has a little more you know, maybe has a little more artistic cred than the others. But I, you know, I'm in love with the Bayverse. And you know, there's this theory out there, if you don't know what the Bayverse is, that that Armageddon and The Rock take place in the same universe, and there are people that include other Bay films, and that might be the case. Bad Boys, you can make a good argument for. Some of the other ones, kind of, you know, the Transformers movies are obviously their own thing, but so the same actor plays the president in both The Rock and Armageddon. There's another actor who plays an FBI agent in both movies. There's another actor who plays a pilot in both movies. And so I love the Bayverse. I love that feel. The early Michael Bay movies are kind of.
This is so news. So my mind is blown. Like, I want an Armageddon Rock sequel.
Yeah. Sign me up. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of stuff in TV right now. And you know, because we just sold this TV show to Lionsgate, and it looks like it's going to go. And then when that happens, you get a little heat, and people start sitting down with you, and they're like, you know, well, what, you know, okay, well, obviously, like, you might want to write this or write that, but if you had your wildest dreams, what would you do? You know, and the idea of doing of giving the Bayverse like the Cobra Kai treatment. You know what I'm saying? Like, like setting something in that Bayverse world right now, like a 10 episode per season series on a streamer or something like that would be, because it's just that kind of tone, that big poppy bonkers, you know, we don't give a fuck sort of attitude towards filmmaking, just swaggery fucking swinging dick action. And so this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, I have for the longest time wanted to do a comic book like that. And there are shades of it in Aberrant, to a certain degree. You know, you could argue that that David from Aberrant is a hero that would feel very comfortable in that universe.
Yeah.
There are shades of it, but you know, but it's a little bit more. I mean, that's you know, that's maybe like a Tony Scott universe sort of thing. I mean, I went full Bay with this, and it's gleeful, and and I think it's wonderful. I mean, all that said, there is more of a, you know, I don't want to say that those Bay movies don't have heart and soul, but like that's the rap that they get. And this goes very much into this kind of theme of family, almost like Boogie Nights-esque. And it is a lot more I don't know, socially and politically forward. I mean, the thing that hasn't been talked about a lot in this book is that it is a diverse cast, you know, team, you know, from start to finish. And that's culturally, that's you know, politically, socially, you know, you know, socially, economically. I'm stumbling over my words here. But and so it's weird. I mean, so it's like it is this kind of I you know, I'm not preaching, I'm not taking a side, but it's almost like there's a first season of The Real World, like Real World New York type atmosphere with this, where there is this kind of like, there is this social political discussion happening in the middle of a Michael Bay movie, which sounds totally weird, but I think it's important now because it's what's in the ether, it's what's happening now, it's what's getting legislated, and I think that it's not making it into our, you know, into our entertainment as much as maybe it should. So,
well, it's interesting that you say that, because like you get introduced in issue 1 to all the characters in, like, you know, and they're like, this is a big cast, like you have a big family that you're dealing with. And I think to allow them to have their space to breathe and to be different and unique is going to help and you along with the story of the world you're creating.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you know what? I mean, it's funny. I noticed, because yours, you're the first show I call, and so this is actually my first kind of interview on it. And so you were the first person that I sent the package to. And it was shortly after I sent it to you. I sent you issue 1, and I'm like, I maybe should have sent issue 2 also, because it's a weird thing. I mean, it's like I think issue 1 presents a certain view of it. Issue 1 is you're setting up the plot. You're setting up this time travel device. There's something going on. That you're telling the story of the past. You're telling the story of the present, and you are being introduced to the team. But it is kind of balls to the walls. And it's that second issue the second issue is about the first issue sets up the problem, the plot, the team broke up. We have to put the team back together. The second issue is about putting the team back together and really exploring why they broke up and really exploring the familial aspect of it. So it's almost like first issue is action movie, second movie is the family issue. And I was like, well, maybe I should have sent the second issue also, because it's like there are these two sides of this coin, right? It is funny, and actually, I mean, the second issue is a little bit bonkers because you spend a good portion of the issue watching one of the characters like Kardashian-esque reality show. The idea is he used to be this kind of superhero, and this tokusatsu savior, and then 10 years later, like, he's just kind of cashing in on that fame. He's not doing any heroing anymore. He's just fucking he's become Kim Kardashian basically, and he has this reality show with these two nitwits, and you're just watching it. It's just fucking like it's he and you, to a certain degree, you want to put a bullet in your head because it's so fucking inane. Yeah, but it's really about him, the hero inside of him, getting reignited and him escaping the gravitational pull of all that of fame. And so yeah, it's interesting. It's like I'm grappling with that right now, is when I send it to reviewers and whatnot. What do I do? Do I just send issue 1 because you want coverage on both issues? But my worry is that there are people going to read issue 1 and just be like, wow, action balls to the wall is fucking awesome. They're going to be people who are like, oh, I wish there was another element to it, and that element is just blown up in issue 2. And so, I wonder if I should maybe send the first 2 issues right off the bat. But
well, I think there's enough. I think, you can send me issue 2 anytime you want. Yes. But I do think there's enough of that in issue 1 that you get the sense that you're going to have the family aspect of this. And if you read comics or you watch movies, you can put a sense of like, oh, he's going to have to get the team back. Like, you can get that sense, or you would imagine you should. So I think if people read issue 1, they're going to be like, holy cow, what is going to happen in this book? Because I read issue 1 and I went, holy cow, what is going to happen in this book? And I can't wait for people to read it. And good golly, if you've never read a Rylend Grant book, the little notes that you put in of pop culture reference, I'm not even going to spoil any of them, but I know you know what I'm talking about. And like, people read the books and like, there's just so many that you put in, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I don't think you're going to spoil any. What was you don't have to say like this is how the reference plays out, but what was the reference that grabbed you? I'm trying to think.
The Comic-Con in the corner.
Okay, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, Autograph Alley, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's funny. That's you're the God, yeah, you're probably the second or third person to specifically point that out. It's funny because like the book there's so much crammed into issue 1. Yep. I mean, it is just it's like it's on fast forward to a certain degree, but I think in a very good way. You just kind of get grabbed by it and you get dragged through, and so it's really funny. Whoever reads it, they're going to hold on to a couple of things, but but when you're watching something via fast forward and like 3 people come back with the same, like, you're talking about one panel, what I'm saying? People are like that
because the sitcom panel, like, but what was so funny was how I read the book. I literally was looking at one of the characters in the panel without even reading the box yet, and I'm like, holy cow, that looks a lot like. And then I read the mail, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Oh man, yeah. I mean,
So good.
the pop culture references I've been doing that since since the beginning of fucking time. I mean, comics wise, I've been doing it since Aberrant, and
Right.
I mean, I've been doing it in Hollywood for 15 years, but a lot, mostly to amuse myself. But it's like it is our shared heritage, right? It's how we I mean, we're fucking nerds, you know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, well, you and I are playing the same game right now. It's like we get on, we get on this video, and you can just see it. We have these touchstones, right? It's like you have a Turtles poster in the back,
Yep.
like that was
Yep.
that was the Turtles were the love of my life when I was fucking 8 years old.
I have my shelf of my VHSs here.
Nice, nice. You and I haven't talked VHS. We should. Oh, nice. Yeah. Give me a second. There you go. We're
This is why our shows go off the rails for so long, because
well, yeah.
we can speak to each other.
Oh wow, yeah. You want to see some Karate Kid VHS tapes?
I know you would have those.
It's well, yeah, but I have like you can't really see it. That whole bottom shelf is all Karate Kid VHS tapes, and so
good.
so like I get them from different countries too. Like I have my like my entire this is my entire UK set.
That's awesome.
In these hard cases, which are just gorgeous. The art is awesome. I just got
That's so cool.
I just got a box set from Australia that they're really weird. They're these like photo covers that are like white and they have different fonts and everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I have like Japanese sets. I have like former rentals. Like I get serious about the Karate Kid stuff. I can show you these forever. But what I was saying is that we have these touchstones, right? They're
Right.
like it's the equivalent of like finding, you're at a party, you don't know anyone, right? But you look over and you see somebody wearing a Ninja Turtle shirt, or you see somebody wearing a Karate Kid shirt, and you can talk to that person. You have like this person, this guy, this gal, they're one of us, right?
Right.
It is this immediate like same difference with sports teams, right? I mean, it's you live in Columbus, I went to the University of Michigan. Like if we were at a party, we didn't know each other, and you had your Ohio State gear on and I had my Michigan gear on, like we might have to fight at some point, over the course of the night, right?
But we would at least have that touch point of we could relate to each other. And I mean, good golly, I literally will not wear Ohio State gear when I travel now, because I'll be at like Disney World and people are like OH, and I'm like, I don't want to say it here, gang.
yeah. You have to be careful, right? Yeah. I mean, so that's funny, and so I think it's it's capital. It's
Right.
it puts people at ease. It lets you know that you're in good hands. It lets you know that you're in the hands of like someone who sees the world the way you do. And so I'm really kind of forward with those. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's so you read it, and issue one's kind of packed with it, and you're like, okay, well, I see what this guy's influences are. I see how he sort of sees the world and appreciates the world. And so I think I'm going to like this book because this person, likes the same things I do, or the same category of things I do,
Right.
or whatever. But yeah, I'm seeing now how packed my, you got Welcome Back, Kotter, and you got Magnum PI, and you have Golden Girls, and you have
It's
Action
so
Jackson and Mr. T and
it's so
Weekend at
jam-packed.
Bernie's. Yeah, it's jam packed. But again, like
Yeah.
it's the entire office is
It's so beautiful.
bonkers. But yeah, it's a lot. But
so this is usually the point of the show where I say, well, we're talking about your Kickstarter. What are some of your rewards? We're not doing that this episode.
we're not doing that. Yeah.
However, I do want to ask, I wanted, there's two things I want to touch on here real quick. I want to talk about thank goodness that you're still doing your homage covers, variant cover.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
The Roadhouse one is fantastic.
No, thanks. Yeah. That was I have to give thanks to Stephen Prince for the suggestion. We it was like it came time to start putting our covers together for Source Point. Source Point Press is a great company, by the way. I don't even think I may have mentioned them loosely at the beginning of the show, but really happy to Source Point is kind of my new comic home in terms of comic shops, traditional releases. They've been a great partner, and so I'm excited to be in business with them. But yeah, we're gonna go a little bit crazy in a good way, I think, with the covers. I mean, regular comic shops will have, you know, the one standard variant,
Right.
like most people will do, and so we have a Roadhouse variant for issue 1, like you said, and you can kind of, I don't know if you're gonna flash that on screen, but at
Oh
the
yeah,
very least, yeah.
it's already on screen.
Okay, cool. Okay, here's, yeah, yeah, it is a an homage to the, you know, the iconic Roadhouse poster. But yeah, what else did we do? We just did a Top Gun variant for issue 3, and then we did an old school Bullet variant for issue 2, and it's just there's this really gorgeous Bullet poster. Maybe I'll send you a link to it so you can
That's
see it,
fantastic.
that we kind of sent out. But yeah, SourcePoint has this program for retailers, and they may even have a spot or two left for retailers. So if you're a retailer and you're watching this and you're interested, but they do retailer exclusive variants. So I think they have 10 spots, and so your comic shop will get its own variant
Ooh.
for it. So and collectors go crazy for this stuff because
Yeah.
they're really, and you know, and then you get like regular covers and metal covers, and you can get foil covers if you want or whatever. But basically, it is an invitation for a retailer to like build a variant with us, you know.
Mm.
And so that happens any number of different ways. So certain retailers, they have a vision in mind already, they have an artist they want to hire, blah 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 blah, and they do it all the time, and they know what sells, and they know what
Right.
fans want. And so really, that, you know, that retailer takes the lead and kind of builds it out. Of course, they're coming to me and saying, hey, here's a layout, here's a whatever, and I'm approving the stuff and giving input on the stuff. But some will come and say, you know, hey, let's build this together, like, you know, and and what are some movies you like, what, you know, what are this, what are that, hey, what about a Predator cover, what about a this, what about a that, and then we start building it out together. We figure out who the artist is going to be, and so yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to have we'll have 10 retailer variants for issue 1, that will exist in very small quantities, and you can probably watch my Facebook and Twitter as we get closer
Yeah.
to the August release, and I will kind of direct you to some of those, the
I'll be on the
availability on some of
hunt
those.
for those.
Yeah,
Man.
but so we should have 10 like uber limited retailer variants that are probably going to be pretty fun and pretty bonkers, and
That's
from
awesome.
some high profile artists and stuff like that. So yeah, we've never had that many. It's like over time I have built out like Aberrant 1 variants, and I
Right.
have built out Banjax 1 variants, just because we'll, you know, you go to it like you know, you want a Ringo Awards variant for Aberrant, you want a San Diego Comic-Con variant for Aberrant, you want a Ringo Awards variant for Banjax and all that stuff, and then you know, Pop Cult HQ put out a couple of cool variants, the
They
Weekend at
did.
Bernie's variant, and
Yeah.
you know, the Demon and the Bottle variant, and so you get those things. But yeah, I've never started from a point of like 12 covers on something, and I think that that's going to be pretty awesome
That's
because you know, I love them. So
yeah.
yeah.
So how is this then? The other question that I wanted to ask you about though now is how has this switch been different for you? Of, you know, you've gotten into the routine of, you know, the last 3 very successful Kickstarters, and now you're doing a different way of putting out a book. How has that transition been for you? Of
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about basically going from comic shops to
yeah,
Kickstarter and then back to comic shops.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the ideal business model for any, you know, creator right now is sort of fighting the battle on both fronts,
mm,
which is where I'm at now. I'm
yeah,
not turning away from Kickstarter. I'm just because comic shops are open again, and because publishers are publishing comics again, regularly, and in a widespread way. I am back to fighting the battle on both fronts. So there are people that only buy their comics on Kickstarter, and there are people that only buy their comics in comic shops, and there is crossover, of course, but not nearly as much as you think. I mean,
okay,
that was like, if it, you know, I think the first lesson that Charlie ever really, you know, taught me about Kickstarter, and maybe the most important lesson, is that you know, that Kickstarter is more of like a fan base builder than anything.
Mm.
people look at Kickstarter and they see money. Oh, I can go on there and I can make money. And that's like, that's important in a way because like, it costs you thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to make one of these things,
Right.
and I don't know about you, but I'm not made of money. I can't just, I don't have a tree in the backyard. I can't ship money.
Nope.
And so these things cost, and it's amazing to be able to go somewhere and make the money to make your book.
Right.
And you don't make a lot of money as an independent comic creator. I don't, let me dispel that myth right now. None of us are getting rich making comic books, putting independent creator owned books in comic shops. Usually it costs you money. I can make a couple of dollars when Aberrant was optioned as a TV series about 2 weeks before issue 2 hit newsstands, and so I can make some money when it gets turned into a TV series and they pay me to write the pilot and everything. But that's not a good business model.
Right.
Kickstarter, you can make a couple of books as a creator, and that's pretty incredible. However, so there is this opportunity on Kickstarter now. There is a fan base that you can choose to serve or not, and I think that if you don't have a foot in both worlds right now, if you're not serving both fan bases, then you're doing your book and yourself as a creator a disservice. And so I think that you have to be kind of playing on both fields right now. And so that was the change I made about a year ago.
Okay.
And so I plan to do that. I mean, I think in a perfect world, I'd have a book or two in comic shops every year, and I would be doing 3 to 4 Kickstarters a year or something like that. That's really like the way to go. The other thing is it's not one or the other now. Like Charlie showed us with White Ash. Charlie did 5 White Ash Kickstarters, and then he combined those issues into a he had an arc, he had a trade, and then he took that to Source Point and got that put in comic shops and had another successful run with it. And so that's the plan with Peacekeepers, with The Jump. Those will see a comic shop at some point. They'll have different covers. They'll kind of be in a different format. They'll have different content. It'll be new in a lot of ways. And so those who enjoyed it on Kickstarter will get something out of buying it in a comic shop also. But then there's this entire comic shop audience that hasn't seen it yet.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's something that's happened over the last couple of years, particularly in the last year or two, is just like, it used to be that if you went to Kickstarter, a traditional publisher wasn't going to touch you. And then smart publishers like Scout Comics realized that was kind of a stupid way to go, because these audiences are separate. And Kickstarter is an amazing training ground. If you sell the shit out of a book on Kickstarter, it's probably going to sell like crazy in comic shops also. You've already proven that an audience likes it, that it's a good concept. And so it's like, so rather than like rolling the dice on something, why don't we just take this thing that we know is good and that readers like? Yeah. And you see it happen over and over again. I mean, it was the biggest case was Boom, taking the Berserker, the Keanu book, to Kickstarter, making $2.1 million, and then putting it in a comic shop and it becoming the highest selling comic book ever. So yeah.
It is. It's such an interesting model, because like, you mentioned White Ash. I had Charlie on right after you. Kickstarters had already come out. The first couple issues had come out from Scout. So I had missed that Kickstarter train. Like I wasn't doing it. And then now, I'm getting him through Scout. Then it comes out and he does, another Kickstarter, and now I'm getting the volume in Kickstarter. Like,
yeah. That's a beautiful book, that hardcover. Yeah.
You have I think it's smart business sense to say, you know what? There are two worlds. And because I think as you're building the fan base, I think you'll see some, I can't wait to get the book, walk into my shop. And, I was able to, go and get, Suicide Jockeys already on my preview poll list on my computer. Like, oh, cool. Oh, yep. I can just add that cover. Sweet. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really cool. How, I know this is what we do. We talk forever. But I want to bring it back real quick to Suicide Jockeys before we wrap up.
Yeah.
How long do you have just an arc right now in mind? How many issues? Like, do you see it, world for as long as you want to write?
Yeah, well, the trick with any of this stuff is to create a contained story
Mhm.
that lives on its own, but to create a world at the same time that can support 100 of these stories, right? And
Right.
so that's what I try to do with everything. And so, what I do almost all the time now is I try to create 4-issue arcs.
Okay.
And so this first arc of Suicide Jockeys is 4 issues. And that said, like at the end of issue 4, they're kind of off to the races. And so you want to see more. And so yeah, the idea is you create this world, you create these characters, you create this drama that will just support as many 4-issue arcs as like
Yeah.
audiences demand. And so yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, it works for Kanto, right?
Yep.
That's what they do when they do one. It's very successful, and the publisher says, "Hey, do another one," and they do another one that's more successful, and
Right.
and on and on and on, and yeah, and I think I've done that. Again, I mean, I work a lot in television, and that's the name of the game with television. Is like,
Right.
if you read Aberrant, it was 10 issues, and really it was 2 5-issue arcs where I kind of did the same thing, but it's like the 10 issues almost kind of works as like a season of a Netflix series, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at you're reading issue 10, and all of the threads, all of the drama from season 1 gets wrapped up, but what's happening is all of this other drama is getting set up, right?
Right.
And we punch the audience in the face, if not just like clobber them with a 2x4 right at the end, present this huge dramatic question, and then and then we
Mm-hmm.
leave. And so the idea is that you, as a viewer, like your mind's racing, you very clearly see that, oh wow, yeah, there are another 10 issues to happen in this world, and that's the best way to do it.
Gang, definitely get onto the Suicide Jockey train early, because I'm telling you what, you're gonna enjoy it. When is it releasing? And when's final? Do you know when the final order cutoff is?
Yeah, we're still working through final order cutoff. The
Okay.
To answer the first question, it drops late August. Yeah, the final order cutoff is a weird thing. I'm finding this out now that not all publishers are in the Diamond FOC program.
Um,
So if you're in the Diamond FOC program, then final order cutoff would be August 2nd, I believe. Source Point is in the process of being kind of moved into the FOC program,
okay.
and so there's still a debate whether this book will be included or not. And if it's not included, then I think orders need to be in by the end of the month,
Okay.
meaning the end of June. However, I don't know what that means, because it's like they're like, oh yeah, but you can still go into your comic shop and order it. You can still order it via sourcepointpress.com, all of that stuff. And so it's like, I don't know if that just means that like it might not be there on day one, but
Right.
I don't know. It all seems absurd to me. The bottom line is, when you hear about it, just go down to your comic shop and tell them you
Yep.
want it, and it'll get to you. Put
They'll
it on your
figure.
pull
We'll
list.
figure out a way.
Yeah. Suicide Jockeys by Rylend Grant. It is a bonkers tokusatsu ride. It's going to be fun. And yeah, we're going to run for 4 issues. Starts in August. Put it on your pull list. Get all 4 issues. It's going to be fun. This is the most gleeful romp I have put out. You're not going to regret it.
That's
You're going to be laughing. You're going to be howling at the moon the whole time. So
that's
go get it.
great. Well, Rylend, thank you again, just for taking so much time to just talk about your comics, but just talk about pop culture and nerdy stuff with me, because
Karate Kid VHS tapes.
Karate Kid, there's always a rabbit hole that we fall down at some point. And it usually involves 80s and 90s nostalgia.
Yeah, sign me up.
It's so good. So, gang, if you enjoyed this interview, there's more Rylend Grant interviews on the channel. Let's be honest, I'll have you on here next week for a new Kickstarter, probably.
I'm still working on it. I'm fulfilling the jump right now, so I'm in my I'm in my nightmare Kickstarter. So I like right now I never want to do another Kickstarter. Once I'm fulfilled, then I'll
Then
start
you'll be like, all right,
doing it.
I'm
So
back.
yeah, so you got at least a month or two
All right,
before
there's a
before I start.
little bit of a break. So
Yeah. We'll take a breather here.
all right. Well, gang, with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.